All right, today's an exciting day. It's finally spring, and I can finally install this guy onto this. Oh my God, the winch is installed. Now I got a few thoughts on this thing. You're gonna want to give yourself 4 to 5 hours to do this. I would say this is more of an intermediate install. You gotta do some wiring, not the hardest thing. You gotta do some wrenching. I mean, that's typical for most installs. But the biggest thing is you gotta modify this bumper. You're gonna have to do some grinding. You're gonna have to get out the cutoff wheel, and you're gonna have to cut the bumper. So make sure you're prepared for that. Make sure you have the tools for that. All right, first thing to do to take off this bumper is we need to remove the lower skid plate. And to do that, it's pretty simple. You need a 15mm socket, and there's gonna be 7 bolts. 5 in the front, 2 in the back. So we're gonna remove that first. Now you can set this piece of steel off to the side. Don't forget the bolts. Alright, next we got to remove this winch delete plate. What that's going to take is a number 30 metric Torx bit. We're going to remove all 8 of these. So you might want to add the bolts back to the plate in case you decide you're going to reinstall it. That way everything is together. Those plastic rivets suck. Try to unscrew them. The thread on the top just comes off. So what you got to do is get a screw, drive it into the top, use some pliers, and just rip it apart. You're not going to use them again anyways. Toss them. Now that those pesky rivets are out, the plastic piece just slide out. There it is. Alright, because we're removing the bumper, we gotta take care of the fog light harness. So obviously there's gonna be 2, and it's right on the back. All you do is pinch the red thing at the top and pull it off. Alright, next up, we're actually gonna be removing this bumper. And we're gonna need an 18mm socket. If you have a deep socket, that's way better. And there's gonna be 4 flange nuts. Sorry, there's gonna be 4 on each side, so a total of 8. You didn't notice? There are these vacuum plates that are on the inside of the frame. So once you get all 8 nuts off, you can lift off the bumper now. Maybe we'll just leave it like this. At least it'll be lighter. Alright. Now's probably a good time to tell you what I'm installing and how I'm installing it. I bought this Smittybilt winch about 5 months ago. It's the X2O comp series with a synthetic line. It's amphibious, so it can work underwater. It's also got a wireless remote. It's pretty awesome. With the Rubicon Hard Rock edition, we got this awesome steel bumper. The anniversary edition also comes with this bumper. You gotta buy a bracket to mount this winch. Any winch for that matter. It's a winch capable bumper, but again, it doesn't actually come with a mounting plate. So if you pull the bumper off, you got nothing to put the winch onto. So what I went with is a Bulldog winch mounting plate. Maximus 3 makes one, Mopar makes one, Rusty's makes one. I'm in Canada, so my options are a little more limited. Prices are usually higher. Again, it's a complete kit. It comes with a nice powder coated bracket. It gives you the fair lead plate. Depending on which winch you buy, you might need to relocate your vacuum pump. With this bumper, you have the option of having an offset winch, which will actually bring the winch towards the driver's side. Unfortunately, that's where the vacuum pump is, which means you're going to have to cut the bracket off and relocate that vacuum pump, which is why we got this. So this will attach to the mounting plate, vacuum pump gets relocated. So there's your solution if you go that route. I'm actually going to center the winch, so it's going to be moved away from the vacuum pump, which means I won't have to cut anything off or relocate it. Alright, so this is where the winch is going to sit. We're going to have to remove this wiring harness. Okay, so once you get this winch plate in place, you're going to want to line it up with the front holes, bottom, and we got a hole over here. You might need to use a rubber mallet just to slide this thing in its spot. It is a little bit finicky with the powder coating. It fits in there pretty snug. Okay, so you're going to get your 19mm bolt, you're going to get your washer, and you're going to get your nut plate. So slide the nut plate in this pocket here, and you're going to have to finagle this bolt. It's a good idea just to get this started. I wouldn't tighten it right now because you want to do both sides. Because this opening here isn't wide enough, so when you go to tighten the bolt, it strips the bolt. What I did was I went in with a Dremel tool, I opened it up, added some spray paint, I bought some grade 8 bolts to replace the ones that got stripped, and now we're back at bolting this thing together. Okay, so we got both bolts in. Now what we got to do is make sure these two holes line up. Temporarily bolt this in while we install our winch. Once it's lined up properly, we can tighten these bolts here. So we installed the plate, but we forgot all about these guys. They actually go between the plate and the frame. So we installed one here, and you can see it fills in the gap down here, and that's pretty necessary, so don't forget to do this step. So again, this bracket, this plate goes between the bracket and the frame. Okay, sandwich that guy in there and tighten it all down. We need to tighten this bolt here, but guess what? Vacuum pump's in the way. So we're gonna take it off. We're gonna fasten this bolt to 66 foot-pounds and then reinstall the vacuum pump. Okay, so all we're gonna need is a 10mm socket. We're gonna take this bad boy off. You know what? Just take off the front bolt, loosen the back one. You can just pivot the pump out of the way, and that'll get you access to the 19mm bolt that you gotta tighten to 66 foot-pounds. Okay, at this point we're gonna actually have to put the winch on the plate. If you want to see an unboxing of this particular winch, the Smittybilt X2O, you can check out this video here. Okay, so we're gonna begin to put this winch together. First thing we're gonna do is install the control box. What we're gonna do is first attach the wires to their appropriate positions on the winch. We've got letters that are gonna match up. We're gonna match up to the letters on the solenoid. All right, this is how the posts ended up looking. Added some dielectric grease in there. We tightened them down with a 13mm wrench, and then we're just gonna add these boots back on. Should help with the waterproofing. So we're gonna attach the control box center to the winch, and that's just a personal preference. You can either go to the left, you can mount it inside engine compartment, whatever you want. You're gonna put the control box on these two rails, and the back piece has this little bracket, and it also comes with this little guy. So this guy is actually gonna fit into some grooves on the bottom of this pole. Once you get that lined up, you're gonna put the bolt through, and this is how it looks. You see the black bracket kind of hooks under into a groove on that support rail. Okay, so we tighten this guy up with an Allen key, and to finish up this process, we're just gonna add these little locking nuts to the back side of the bolt. And by the way, we're gonna use a 7mm socket wrench to do that. All right, now that the winch is all set up, we're gonna drop it onto this bracket, see how it fits. We're gonna have to drop in some nuts in this location right there. We're also gonna have to do the same on the other side. 2 nuts. But anyways, we're gonna use a washer, lock nut. It's a lock washer. And we're gonna mount it underneath the plate through the winch into those nuts that we just slid in there. And this is going to use a 17mm wrench. Alright, the winch is mounted on the plate. That took a while, but we're finally through. Now we got to move on to the bumper. Okay, now that we're moving on to modifying the bumper, we have to remove the license plate bracket. We got a 10mm socket and there's 4 bolts. Pop this guy off. Now we have to remove this Rubicon plate. It's a nice little piece of plastic, so we gotta flip the bumper over. Okay, so now we gotta remove these one-time use retaining rings. I don't know what they're called. You can do that with a screwdriver, just a flathead. Just work underneath. Just get a good start for your side cutters. Alright. Flip this thing over. Pop off the trim piece. There we go. Okay, so we got to make a few marks before we cut up this bumper. We want to make sure we're doing the right thing here. So we're going to do first a few guidelines. We're going to use the factory fair lead holes to draw a straight line across. What I'm also going to do is draw a line below the opening. And I'm going to use the bottom edge as a guide. Okay, so next we're going to draw a vertical line across these 2 holes. Now from this vertical line, we're going to measure 48mm. Right there is where you're going to do a nice center punch. Okay, so now that we have the center punch, we're going to use a 3mm drill bit to drive in a pilot hole. So now that we just drilled our pilot hole with a 3mm bit, we're going to use an arbor and a hole saw to drill a 44mm hole, which should match up with what we need to open the fair lead. Successfully drilled a hole in my Hard Rock bumper. Okay, our next step is to get rid of this piece of metal here. And how we're going to do that is either cut off disc, we just chop that off. Okay, next step, because we got this sharp edge, we gotta file it down, and then we're gonna paint it to prevent it from rusting. Thanks, Miguel. Okay, now that we have exposed metal, we need to spray paint this. Now that our paint is dry, we can go ahead and install our filler plate. This is gonna cover up our chop job, as well as give us new mounting holes for our center fair lead. For the top of the bolt, we have a number 6 hex. Got a washer and a 17mm nut in the back. Next up, we're going to install our fair lead. We have the new centering holes. This just lines right up. Alright, now's an exciting time. We get to put the bumper back on. Let's take out these temporary bolts here. We don't need those anymore. Get your bumper, line it up. Don't forget to put these plates like so. Alright, bumper is back on. Now remember those 8 bolts, those flange nuts that we took off? Gotta put them back on. Alright, next up you gotta reconnect the fog lights. Next way back here. We've got 8 more bolts. We're gonna use a 50mm ratchet. It's essentially for the metal skid plate going under here. Okay, it's a new day and we got the hood popped. We got a few more things to do to finish up this install. Namely, we got to run these wires to the battery. So I'm going to show you how to do that and what route I'm going to take. Okay, so here's how I wired the winch. Unfortunately, the cables are pretty short, so you don't really have much wiggle room. Here's how I did it. Feed the wire through on the passenger side, beside the frame rail, and behind this bushing. From here, we're gonna snake it all the way up here. From the top, you're gonna see that comes up next to your power steering fluid. You can see by running the wires next to the power steering bottle, we have just enough cable to get to the positive post. Now we've got the wires run. So what we're gonna do is connect our positive lead to the post. Once you've got your wires hooked up, I'd recommend going through, zip tying wherever possible, and purchasing some wire loom. This will just help from chafing. You don't want these wires to get cut or exposed in any way. Now that we've got everything wired up, it's finally time to install the winch line. Cycle the winch, and what you want is that thread down there to be as close as possible to the top, because it might be actually underneath. This drum spins around, so if you find yourself with this thread way down here, it's going to be real hard to attach the line. So cycle the winch, get it in a good spot. Okay, when installing your winch line, you want to pay attention how this drum actually spins. So when the winch is feeding in, it's actually pulling from the bottom of the drum, which means when you go to install the winch line, make sure you wrap it below the drum and then up to meet up with the bolt. And we're gonna use a 5mm hex key to tighten this thing down before spooling in the rest of the line. Now that we have the winch line attached, we can start up the car, and we're gonna spool in the rest of the cable. Get your remote, attach it to the port on the side. And you're going to want to apply some tension while feeding this in. Thanks to those that stuck it through this long haul. This is my first instructional DIY video, so let me know if there's anything I can improve on or change. If you haven't already, please subscribe, like, and comment. Again, any feedback is appreciated. Let me know if I messed something up or I could have done something better. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next time.